Hello and welcome to this Spotlight episode on Fire Queen. A quick look at lesser known locomotives from the early days of steam. In the top left hand corner of Wales, in the ancient kingdom of Gwynedd and in the mountains of Snowdonia, there was a railway. It wasn't a particularly long railway or an important railway, but is all there was. It was built to carry the slates from the great quarry at Dinorwic down to the sea at Porth Dinorwic. And on this railway there were two locomotives, Fire Queen and Jenny Lind. This is their story. The first railway from Dinorwic Quarry down to the sea had been opened as a horse-worked railway in 1824, and this transport revolution helped the Dinorwic Quarry become the second largest slate quarry in the world, owned and operated by the fabulously wealthy Asherton Smiths. In 1843, this was rebuilt as a 4-foot gauge horse railway. Finally, in 1848, locomotives were introduced. The railway system up in the quarries was built to a nominal 2-foot gauge, and in order to prevent the brittle slates from breaking, the little slate wagons from the quarry were loaded 4 at a time onto unique transporter wagons on the 4-foot gauge main line to be taken down to Porth Dinorwic. Fire Queen and her sister Jenny Lind were built in Northfleet, Kent by Alfred Horlock and Company. Alfred had been born out of wedlock in 1822, and he wasn't christened until 2 years later. He appears to have flourished, and thanks to the benevolence of his uncle Edward Medlicott, during 1847 he was able to start his own iron foundry as an engineer and boilermaker at the tender age of 25. He married in the same year. The two Padarn railway locomotives were his first and only locomotives. The Dinorwic Quarry records show that in June 1848, a first instalment of £733 was paid by them to Messrs. Alfred Horlock and Company on account of the locomotive engines for the railway. In August, a further instalment of £1,100 was paid, and the Fire Queen was conveyed by sea from Northfleet to Caernarfon for £40. In September, the second locomotive, Jenny Lind, followed likewise, and in November 1848, Horlock was paid the balance for the two locomotive engines and all extras, totalling £564, 2 shillings and 10pence. Thus, each locomotive cost around £1,200 each. Despite this initial success, Alfred was ultimately unlucky in business. He went bankrupt in 1853 and was thrown in debtor's jail in Maidstone. He was only released in 1856, and during the following year his wife died. His works were sold, and he died from tuberculosis in 1866. The two Padarn railway locomotives are unique. They were built under the auspices of Thomas Russell Crampton's 1847 patent for a high-speed railway locomotive with a driving axle behind the firebox. This was despite the fact that Robert Stephenson and Company and Charles Taylor and Company had both built locomotives with driving axles in such a position, but they never appear to have challenged the patent. Anyway, Fire Queen was built to Crampton's patent with a driving axle behind the firebox, but this presented a problem. Crampton had used outside valve gear, but Horlock used traditional inside valve gear. It was usual to put the eccentrics which work the valve gear on the driven axle, and other than passing the eccentrics through the firebox, this wasn't going to work, so instead the eccentrics are on the leading coupled axle, with the valve gear folded back on itself. Ingenious, but distinctly unmechanical. As an aside, Dolgoch, built for the Talyllyn Railway in 1866, has the same valve gear arrangement. Despite this peculiar arrangement of their valve gear, Fire Queen and Jenny Lind were fitted with the then up-to-date Stephenson Link valve gear to enable them to work expansively. There is no frame, the axles and other components being supported by brackets directly riveted to the boiler barrel. The cylinders are steeply inclined, positioned almost midway along the boiler, and are fed with external steam pipes from a large steam dome, ahead of which is a sand box. The cast iron wheels are not the originals, and a brick arch was added to the firebox of Fire Queen so she could burn coal sometime around 1860. These two engines had long and productive working lives. When more up-to-date locomotives arrived from Hunslet in Leeds, Jenny Lind was scrapped in the 1880s, but Fire Queen was preserved after retirement in 1886. Packed in grease and lodged inside an engine shed at the quarry workshop. Woken occasionally for an inspection, there she slumbered until 1953, when she was purchased by Sir John Smith MP. Then, in 1965, the National Trust opened its railway museum at Penryn Castle near Bangor. And after 80 years' seclusion, Fire Queen went on public display where she can still be enjoyed to this day. So those are the basics on Fire Queen, an unusual and unique locomotive in North Wales. Why not give her a visit the next time you are in the top left-hand corner of Wales? If you have enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe.